When it came to Toto, it was always about, well, family. Steve Lukather, Luke, David Page, David Hungate, later Mike Porcaro. But that Porcaro family played a huge role in starting that band. Jeff Porcaro on drums and Steve Porcaro on keyboards. Steve has a brand new album. We'll get into that in a second. A whole bunch of new followers on his Facebook and on his Spotify. But first, we talk about the family winning those Grammys for Toto IV. We talk about Toto IV quite a bit. That was their biggest album, of course. And bonus material halfway through the video of us talking to Steve a couple of years ago. And then we go into Toto IV again and Finding Yourself, Jeff Porcaro, his brother, and so much more on Rock History Music. He wasn't the loudest Porcaro brother, but his imprint is all over pop and rock. Before Toto even had a hit, Steve Porcaro was on the road with Gary Wright on the famous Dreamweaver tour. Then he got a call from Boss Skaggs to join up on the Silk Degrees tour. There he was, skipping high school and learning how to sculpt songs. Some of the sounds that would later make Toto very famous. By the mid-70s, he was back in LA, helping to form the band alongside his brother Jeff Porcaro on drums, Bobby Kimball on vocals, Steve Lukather on guitar, keyboardist David Page, and bassist David Hungate. Together, they became Studio Elite, the band every producer called when perfection mattered. On the band's biggest album from 1982, Toto IV, Steve Porcaro shimmered through some great tunes. Rosanna, named after his then-girlfriend, Rosanne Arquette. Africa. There were 6 singles on Toto IV, and 4 hits. The other 2, Make Believe and I Won't Hold You Back. Waiting for Your Love was also released, and Afraid of Love. And let's not forget their debut album had a big hit as well, with Hold the Line. In 1978, Toto IV won 6 Grammys, but his real magic kind of reached beyond that band. When Michael Jackson needed a tender, otherworldly ballad for Thriller, he and producer Quincy Jones picked Steve Porcaro's Human Nature. He co-wrote that one. It's still one of the most haunting songs that Michael Jackson has ever released. And when Don Henley was carving out his own career in the 80s, there was Steve Porcaro right there on his very first hit, Dirty Laundry. And on his second record, Building the Perfect Beast, The Boys of Summer, All She Wants to Do Is Dance. Steve left Toto as a full-time member after the 7th one in the late 80s. He still toured with them and he still appeared on albums. But he wanted to do more. He wanted to write more. He got involved in film and TV. The latter's best example would be the series Justified. We lost his drumming legend brother Jeff Porcaro in 1992, and bassist Mike Porcaro, who joined the band after Toto IV, we lost him in 2015. But it's Steve Porcaro keeping the family name going. And remember, the Porcaro brothers are sons of the famous Joe Porcaro, who's worked with Frank Sinatra and some of the biggest names in the industry. He was a great drummer as well. That's some pretty good DNA. Steve released his first solo album in 2016 called Someday Somehow. And his new one is called The Very Day, which is available now. Before Toto IV, was there a part of you, because the last 2 albums hadn't done as well as the company or you guys didn't expect, and I like those albums a lot, especially like Hydra a lot. But was there a part of you going into that, because you don't who knows what's going to happen? I mean, that was you guys at your best, it seemed. But was there a part of you that thought, well, if this doesn't work out, I'm just going to do my synth things? Or was anybody in the band thinking, well, this might not work out? Or are you guys that confident?
No, I was in this. I was excited because I had learned during the 3rd album, which was a difficult period for me as far as, we had brought an new engineer in who was a co-producer, this guy, Jeff Workman, and him and I bumped heads. We did not get along. We didn't get along, and that was a very rough project for me. But out of that, and I was trying to put my ideas, I had our studio all set up, and we had this 8-track Otari. And I said, my idea at the time was, okay, I'm going to put the rhythm tracks on 2 tracks, and I'm going to experiment, do all my experimenting without the guys around, and throw all this stuff down on the remaining 6 tracks. And then when it's time to do synths, I'll know just what to do. Mm-hmm. Well, no one ever wound up hearing any of that. I killed myself on those 6 tracks. And no one on all the tracks of the album. I did all this crazy experiments and really cool shit with the modular synthesizer and sequencers. And I bounced it down and I put these slap things on it and had these crazy experiments that came out great. No one has ever heard that stuff. And you know why? Because I couldn't get it up again. When it was time to do synths, I couldn't recreate that stuff. It was magical and it was bounced down. And I didn't even think to like try flying it. It was in the wrong format. It was on this Atari 8-track. We couldn't sync up the machines in those days. So the Toto IV, the next album, and this is all I was thinking about. I wasn't thinking about, to your
Of
question,
course.
I wasn't thinking about what else am I going to do. I just was thinking about, I got to show people what I'm capable of, what this stuff can do when it's used by, when it's used in a real musical way. And the next year, our setup in the studio was exactly the same, except David Paich bought 224 tracks. And the guy said, okay, we'll make you some work tapes, but we're not going to use your stuff. You're not an engineer. You don't know what you're doing. I said, sure, okay. Just let me just make me these work tapes so I can fool around. Jeff Workman, this guy that I had bumped heads with so much, he started hanging out with us. He was hanging out with David at the Manor all the time. And I started asking him, I said, Jeff, if I was to throw something on tape, why couldn't they use it? And he began to give me lessons in basic engineering, in 0VU. Well, because we had this great Trident Fleximix board that had meters on everything on the, how do I know I'm getting the ultimate level into a harmonizer, into a piece of outboard gear? I'm always just kind of guessing. I just kind of turn up the send and I kind of turn up the input and it kind of works sometimes. How do I know I'm giving it the ultimate level? Because the two reasons why they wouldn't be able to use it was if I had something that was distorted or if the level was too low. They had to push all that noise. And he just taught me the concept of 0VU, of getting good, solid levels.
Yeah.
And taught, you know what I mean? And so this guy that I didn't get along with at all wound up being totally responsible for teaching me where I wound up doing 95% of the synthesizer stuff on Toto IV. Yeah. I engineered. And they kept every fucking bit of it.
Oh my God.
Nobody was around when I was doing the Rosanna solo, And to me, the other key thing about that fourth album was that Greg Ladani, who had become a friend, he had nothing to do with the rest of the album. He just came in and mixed. He didn't know who recorded what. There was none of the band politics. He just had fresh ears. If he liked something, the Rosanna solo was 2 faders, left and right. All that different stuff flying around all over the place. He didn't say, well, who engineered this? Levels were just nice and bold and just right, and he cranked it up.
All of a sudden, you guys were like all those Grammys. Your dad's in the pit, in the orchestra pit. That must have been kind of cool because he's probably looking, what the hell? You know who you guys were.
My girlfriend now, she just loves that story, that, you know what I mean? And even Mike was had taken Hungate's place, so he was with us. But, there's my dad in the pit, like he always was. Oscars, Grammys, whatever. Top session guys, movie guys got that call usually. And, he was in the pit again, like usual. And here we are getting Grammy after Grammy, and his friends are all going, yo, Joe, way to go. And you know what I mean? All 3 of us boys are kept going up to the stage. It was great. We were having a ball. The fourth one and that tour there, everything was clicking. And when you're playing, you know what I mean? When it's selling good and people are responding and the record company they love you and everyone's hanging out and dinner is on them. And,
Yeah.
That's the good stuff.
What was that tour like? What are your memories of that tour?
Like I said, it was all good and positive, and Rosanna was traveling with me and was on the road with me, did the whole tour with me. And
what was her reaction to that song?
At the time she loved it. I actually, long after we, like 10 years after we broke up, I would feel sorry for her because every time she's on Letterman, You know what I mean? These guys trying to figure out what the fuck do they ask them about besides their new movie. You know what I mean? She'd be asked about that song. And a couple times I think she made some disparaging comments that of course Lukather latched onto about how, you know, if I hear that song again, I'm gonna scream. You know, I'm sick of that damn song. You know, at the time she was, you know what I mean? She thought it was great, like we all did. You know, she was, believe me, I was there when she walked in the door as David Page was playing the groove as he was writing the song. I'm like, Dave, meet my girlfriend, Rose, you know, meet this girl I'm seeing, Rosanna. And he was as taken with her, understandably, as we all were. It wasn't a weird, jealous thing at all. She was on fire then and looked gorgeous and was funny and sweet and still is, you know.
Was that challenging dating an actress?
Fuck yeah.
I don't think I could do it.
Believe me, she kind of put everything on hold to hang out and be around. And that wasn't the first time she did that. She did that with a lot of people. But just to answer your question, the short answer is yes, it's very challenging. And I've never been with an actress since. Hey man,
Steve, what's going on, man? How are you?
what's going on with you?
Oh,
I told him about your favorite picture in the world, you two backstage in Vancouver.
Oh yeah. No,
Hey, I was telling your dad, listen, I'm not blowing smoke. I've been hearing some bits and pieces of you online there, and I've been seeing some clips. You're playing your ass off, man. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You know what I mean?
Oh, Steve, man, thank you. And that means a
Sounding
lot.
great. You're getting this confidence and stuff. You're coming into your own, and it's really nice to see, man. I'm proud of you, you know?
Oh, Steve, man, thank you. And also too, um, congrats on the new album, man. Like I've been listening to the singles as they've been coming out, and I'm probably gonna listen to the whole album probably tonight. But man,
Yeah,
that
check it out.
that is some real stuff going on too. Like,
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited. I'm very
yeah.
excited. And I've been getting great response. You know what I mean? I've been like so indulgent. It's been so nice not having to look over my shoulder and have
You're
to,
just playing.
I'm just doing my thing. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
His high school band had Carlos Vega.
Oh, for real?
Carlos Vega,
Oh, yeah.
they were old friends. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. My best friend, Andy Leeds, you know, who I would hang out at the park at, he was a sax player. And at one point, my band had horns in it. Well, but his summer job for 2 summers, he was an usher at the Hollywood Bowl, like my son Dominic, too. Carlos was also an usher at the Hollywood Bowl. And Andy just said to me, he goes, you know, I've met this kid from Eagle Rock. And Eagle Rock might as well been Arizona as far as we were concerned. We were such this valley. Everyone else in my band was at my high school. But Carlos was from Eagle Rock. And I knew it was another their school had a great music teacher who was really, really good. And there were some really good jazz players and stuff out of Eagle Rock High. Anyway, Carlos came and auditioned, and it was like he was immediately the new drummer, you know?
So Jeff was busy doing. Would you have picked Jeff because he was doing? Jeff was already out there.
Jeff was on the road with Steely Dan and stuff. This is when I was still in high school.
Yeah.
Jeff was working. Jeff was doing sessions. He was doing Steely Dan, Sonny and Cher first.
He
He was living his dream.
Wow.
He just would come, you know, he'd come over to the parents' house and stick his head in at rehearsals and stuff. And
Carlos and Jeff, were they friends? They were friends, right?
yes, absolutely. Tell Chase to remember that, you know, Jeff's heroes, Jim Gordon, Jim Keltner. Look up Leon Delaney and Bonnie, Accept No Substitute. Listen to the drumming on those albums. Those were the stuff that Jeff Keltner and Gordon.
Yeah.
Those were the guys that Jeff modeled. You know, Jim Gordon was the shuffle guy, you know, the rock and roll shuffle guy. You know, Jim Keltner, what he brought. Listen to Dreamweaver by Gary Wright. That was straight. That was Keltner that said, "Hey, can we try it kind of like as a shuffle?"
Yeah.
That was Keltner.
I kind of like to own the Rosanna solo, but you know what? Paige was right there with me. You know what I mean? I was conceptualizing it, and I had, you know what I mean? I was off on a tangent with it and had this grand idea, but David was right there every step of the way, my big brother behind me. And it was the same with the Africa solo. I wanted it to be a Paige solo. I wanted him to do something fun and have it be his notes, but I was right there, programming and egging him on every step of the way.
You were the guy with all those keyboards really in the band, right? You love that technology, right?
Yes. Well, that was also my slot. I mean, coming up, I saw my brother Jeff's career took off right out of high school. My brother Mike's career took off right out of high school. And, I wanted to be I didn't know if a band thing was ever going to happen. And I just wanted to be a session musician. And the keyboard players, David Paches and David Foster and Michael O'Marty. And I could go on and on naming these guys that are just like, people weren't going to hire me over those guys for a basic Rhodes part or a basic piano part. And at that time, though, in the early 70s, there really was this chasm between the guys who really knew about synths, which were pretty much nerds with pocket protectors that you didn't want to hang out with, you know what I mean? And, the musicians that, the great players didn't want to have anything to do with all that stuff, for the most part. Then it changed very fast, and more and more musicians started getting way into synths. But when I started, there was this big gaping hole, and I just smartly realized to make a weakness a strength, and I just really dove into synths in a big way. And then all of a sudden, David Foster and David Page and all these guys, I was still getting hired for all those sessions, but they hired me to be next to them, tweaking, you know what I mean, tweaking knobs for them, which was like falling off a log for me. So it was amazing. I got to play on all these great sessions, and I wasn't the guy having to nail the piano parts. I was, sometimes I would play, and sometimes I'd just be dialing in a Mini Moog bass part, Mini Moog bass sound for one of these guys. And I just have always loved working with other keyboard players, especially ones that are a lot better than me, because then I know I'm covered. Then I know whatever comes up, you know what I mean? Yeah. They need an improvised jazz thing, something I can't do. I've got my big brother David Page, you know what I mean, ready to go,
Like I see you, it's that old thing. I ask every artist, what would you tell yourself at 18, knowing what you know now? And let me answer just a question for you. To me, you're just fully realized now. It's almost like young artists don't know what they don't know. You know what I mean? It's like that first album. You don't know what you don't know. You go in. Sometimes you're lucky. Sometimes you're not. Mm-hmm. The times, the sound. Mm-hmm. But I look at you now, and I'm putting words in your mouth. I just see you incredibly comfortable in your skin.
I am. I used to, we all supported each other and loved each other. And I used to go see my brothers and Steve Lukather and these guys at the Baked Potato. I'd go see them every week playing with these monsters, Greg Matheson and, you know what I mean, and Larry Carlton. And I would leave every time just beating myself up about how much I had to get my shit together. And I got to get my jazz chops, and I got to quit screwing around and get serious. And every time I'd go out of there just beating myself up. And I don't do that anymore. That story I just told you about when I was young and I kind of assessed the situation, and you know what I'm saying? I've really come to realize I just have to keep reminding myself of that all the time. And it's really what I always tell young musicians is to try to find your voice. What is it that makes you unique in the world, you know what I mean? And then go for the balls with that, you know what I'm saying? And to separate yourself from everybody. I've always been in a band with another keyboard player, but I just wanted to be handy to be around, you know what I mean? I just wanted to be invited to the party, and be invited to the sessions and contribute. And now I'm just very comfortable with, I know that there's nobody that's as good at being Steve Porcaro as I am, and I hate hearing myself being referred to in the third person like that, but you know what I'm saying. It's just I know that, you know what, there's a million guys now that can do what I do, and there's all kinds of great musicians, but if you want my thing, you know what I mean, it's and I'm just always honing my thing and just wanting to get better and better at what it is I do, instead of worrying about being able to play jazz. You know what I mean? I don't worry about that anymore. I just, it's like when I started doing film. James Newton Howard mentored me, and I kind of was modeling what I was doing after him. And I had some scores that were just like, it was like a watered down James Newton Howard. You know what I'm saying? It was, instead of being the best Steve Porcaro I could be, I was trying to see if I could be that guy. You know what I mean?
I mean, you guys have put me through a lot. Divorce, the seventh one was my divorce album. It wasn't a pretty time.
I'm so sorry.
By the way, speaking of that.
Divorce or the seventh one?
The seventh one. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, I'm really good at this. When I saw you as being not an official member of the band, I have to tell you, man, I was bothered by them going, but he's still there, right? Because there's that thing, and I see it in fans in the comments of YouTube videos. But with that comes a lot of comments and a lot of crazy people. But when the band when they see a fracture, it really scares these guys. And as a fan back then, I know long question, I was bothered by that. But you just needed to find your space?
Real honestly, it was, you have to understand the time. And this speaks to the whole music business and even what's going on with Weezer right now. Wherein that the band had reached a point, things were strained with the record company. There hadn't been enough for big enough hits, right? And the guys were talking about, Nirvana had just come out. Grunge was, bands with keyboard players were all of a sudden very unpopular, let alone two keyboard players playing kind of this quasi-orchestral kind of proggy stuff. So all they were talking about is how we had to cut off all that stuff. We had to lose all that stuff. We had to get more basic, more rock and roll, more down to earth, and stop all this crazy stuff. And what they were describing was the stuff that I felt like was my reason for being on planet Earth. You know what I mean? Is what they were talking about cutting out. That was my reason for being in the band. You know what I'm saying? Was all that stuff. So, there was thank God, there was no huge fight. There was no ugly scene at all. Just after the Fahrenheit album, and I also really, they were wanting me to take a less and less role. And there was a certain, quite honestly, they never understood what I did. And when you're talking about my brother Jeff, when you're talking about Paige and Luke, now Paige was always very supportive, but Luke and my brother Jeff are such pure players. They're such pure musos, such amazing musicians who just want to come in and play and nail the track and nail it, whether it's songwriting or whatever. They're so good at what they do. They're so proficient at their instrument and such naturals. And I wasn't that guy at all. You know what I mean? I'm somebody who the studio is my instrument, and I need to tweak and think about it and tweak some more and think about it some more and try this and try that. And they couldn't stand that stuff, being around. You got to understand. And we produced ourselves, right? So it wasn't like they would just leave me with the producer and go home. For the most part, we were all there all the time. You know what I mean? When they're doing vocals, everything, the whole band would be in the booth, except the singer and stuff. We really produced those albums together as much as maybe David was the leader. You know what I mean? We were all there all the time. So right away I figured out to take the synths to the level I wanted to take them to. I wanted to show everybody why I was into all this stuff and how I could use it in a way that hadn't been, in a musical way, you know what I mean, that I hadn't really heard yet, and I just realized I wasn't going to be able to do that with the guys around. I had to, you know what I'm saying? I was forced to learn to engineer, really. I had no idea about any of that stuff. And it's funny, Jeff Workman, our engineer on our third album, who I really bumped heads with when we were making the album, he became the best friend in the world as far as just teaching me gain structure. I asked him the stupidest questions about, why couldn't they use, if I recorded my own stuff, why couldn't they use it? You know what I mean? Because I was no engineer, and the band would tell me, we'll give you some slaves, but we're not going to use any of your stuff. You're no engineer. You know what I mean? And I just asked them, why wouldn't they be able to use it? And I learned gain structure and learned how to, how to record myself. You know what I mean? And they wound up using every single thing I did. You know what I mean? On Toto IV, that was all me by myself, Then, right, the band was chasing hits and trying to chase Nirvana and all this stuff, and sure enough, it wasn't very successful. You know what I mean? Toto wasn't being Toto anymore, and I think they've struggled, where now with, like, you know, when you talk about the little things, and Toto 14 was finally when I came back to the band and started recording. They know exactly what it is I do. I know exactly what it is I do. They were encouraging me to be the best Steve Porcaro I can be. They wanted that quirky guy that went crazy and did those nuts things with the synths. They were begging me to be myself now. You know, that's the difference now between now and when I left the band. It was very different. You know, where now the guys are realizing what made us Toto, what separated us from everyone else, and that we need to celebrate that as opposed to trying to chase fashion and, you know what I mean, chase what we think the record company wants us to do. You know what I'm saying? It's just, now we're just being the best Toto we can be.
Remember to like our videos, subscribe if you're on YouTube, like if you're on Facebook. We're really trying to pick up our Facebook. So if you're on YouTube, the link to Facebook will be on there. And if you're already on Facebook, well, thank you very much. Comment on our videos, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos on social media. If you want to make a donation, there's a PayPal link at the very top of every one of our YouTube videos. I'm John Bowden. This is Rocky Street Music. Take care.